Dear students, to begin with the module about the first video, that is about the organization of the nervous system. Myself, Dr. Deepa from the Department of Pharmacology. About the organization of the nervous system. Nervous system, it has been divided into peripheral nervous system and central nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, it has been further divided into efferent division and the afferent division. The peripheral nervous system, it has been includes the neurons which is located outside the brain and spinal cord, whereas the central nervous system is composed of brain and spinal cord. And peripheral nervous system, as I told you, it has got a efferent division and afferent division. Efferent division carries the impulses away from the brain and spinal cord into the peripheral tissues, whereas the afferent division, it carries the impulses from the peripheral tissues into the brain and spinal cord. And the efferent portion is further divided into the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, also known as visceral or the involuntary nervous system, because of the nature, that is the involuntary functions what it deals with. That's why it has been called as autonomic nervous system or even the involuntary nervous system. In this autonomic nervous system, it has been further divided into enteric nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. And as I told you, we have a somatic system also. What is the somatic system? It has been involved in voluntary control of the functions such as the contraction of the skeletal muscles, mainly which deals with the locomotion. Okay, and about the enteric nervous system, actually it is an independent system which mainly deals with the functions of the GI, motility, the blood flow and all. Okay, and you all know about the parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic neuron, the sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons, it originate in the central nervous system. Okay, and they emerge from the different different regions of the neurons, from two different regions in the spinal cord. So about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, so where it evolves. Okay, so we have the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. So the sympathetic division, we all know it, these fibers, sympathetic nervous system, all these fibers, it emerges from the thoracic and lumbar region. And thoracic, that is from the thoracic T1 to the lumbar L2. So these are the sympathetic fibers where it emerges from. And coming to the parasympathetic division, it it emerges from the different nerves, that is the cranial nerves. To begin with, it's the third cranial nerve, that is the oculomotor. Then the fourth, that is the facial nerve. Okay, third oculomotor, seventh facial nerve, and the ninth the glossopharyngeal, and 10th the vagus. And then from the sacral area, that is from the S2 to S4. Okay, so these are the regions where this preganglionic parasympathetic fibers emerges from. So when it comes to the sympathetic nervous system, you might have heard of fight or the flight response. So what is this fight or flight response? These are the changes experienced by the body when you have to deal with any stressful situations or any emergency situations, like trauma, when there is fear or some kind of anxiety, hypoglycemia, cold, the exposure to the cold, in sometimes exercise. So in all such situations, our body will experience such changes. So which can lead to an increase in the heart rate and BP, increase in the blood flow to the skeletal muscles, dilatation of the pupils and the bronchi, reduce in the GI motility. So all these reactions are triggered by the sympathetic activation of these effector organs. So what happens when there is sympathetic activation? There will be a release of this, there will be stimulation of the adrenal medulla. When there is stimulation of the adrenal medulla, there will be a release of the neurotransmitters like norepinephrine, epinephrine and all will be released, which acts on the adrenergic receptors which is present in the effector organs. So what happens when these neurotransmitters are being released into the bloodstream, then it acts on these receptors which is present on the effector organs. So this is, sympathetic nervous system is very essential. Why? To prepare our body to handle the stressful situations or any uncertain situations due to any unexpected stimuli. Okay. Next is about the parasympathetic nervous system. So what is the function? It maintains the homeostasis within the body. Okay. So it acts to oppose or balance the actions of the sympathetic division. So it's just the actions are like opposite to each other. So what when this parasympathetic nervous system, it predominates the sympathetic nervous system when it's a situation like rest and digest situations. In such situations, this parasympathetic nervous system predominates the sympathetic nervous system. So these are the difference, just some summary of the actions which are being mediated to the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. For example, in the eye, there will be sympathetic nervous system. It causes dilatation, whereas parasympathetic causes pupillary constriction. Then ciliary muscle, it accommodates for the far vision, whereas here it accommodates for the near vision. Heart rate, then the myocardial contractility all increased due to the sympathetic activity, whereas it is all slowed down because of the parasympathetic activity. Arterioles, skin and most other skeletal muscle and all, there is no action much mediated. So there is constriction and dilatation. Glands like salivary, lacrimal and sweat. So viscid secretions, whereas here the secretions will be more, which is being mediated to the parasympathetic nervous system. Bronchi, it is there will be relaxation and contraction. GI, there will be relaxation and contraction. So you can see here the actions are just opposite to each other, isn't it? So uterus not effect on the not much effect to the parasympathetic, but in there will be uterine relaxation that is mediated through the sympathetic division. Then liver also no effect which is mediated through the parasympathetic. There will be gluconeogenesis, glycogenolysis, okay, and renin secretion to the kidney will increase, and lipolysis through the which is mediated through the fat cells. Okay, so these are the summary of the actions which is being mediated through the sympathetic and parasympathetic division. Now about the neurotransmitters and the receptors. So what are neurotransmitters? See, these are actually like a chemical signals. Why we need such chemical signals? Because to communicate between the nerve cells and the effector organs. So this occurs only when there is a release of neurotransmitters from the nerve terminals. So whenever there is an action potential, it triggers the release of these neurotransmitters which lead to the depolarization. So when there is an increase in the calcium, so that calcium release initiates the fusion of the synaptic vesicles with the presynaptic membrane and release the contents by the exocytosol. So whatever this been stored neurotransmitters that has been stored in the synaptic vesicles, that will be released, okay, by exocytosis. So once these neurotransmitters are released, it diffuse through the synaptic cleft, synapse, that is between the neurons and combined with the specific receptors that has been present on the postsynaptic target cell. That means which has been present on the postsynaptic membrane. So whatever on the effector organs, whatever receptors are present, these neurotransmitters, it go and act on the specific receptors. So just like acetylcholine and norepinephrine, they are the primary neurotransmitters in the autonomic nervous system. Norepinephrine being the primary neurotransmitter in the sympathetic nervous system, and acetylcholine being the primary neurotransmitter in the parasympathetic nervous system. So just a summary of that is like, in the sympathetic innervation of the adrenal medulla, the neurotransmitter which has been released is the acetylcholine, which acts on the nicotinic receptor in the adrenal medulla, and in the will be release of the epinephrine, then which acts on the adrenergic receptors. In the sympathetic division, through the preganglionic neuron, acetylcholine will be released, which acts on the nicotinic receptor, and from the postganglionic neurons, norepinephrine will be released, which acts on the effector organs where the adrenergic receptors are present. And in the parasympathetic division, the acetylcholine, which is the major neurotransmitter, which acts on the nicotinic receptors and even the that is in the preganglionic. Postganglionic, it acts on once the acetylcholine is being released, it acts on the muscarinic receptors. Okay, and these are the neurotransmitters and the receptors where it acts. Whereas in case of somatic nervous system, there is no ganglia involved. Only there will be, without any involvement of ganglia, there will be a release of acetylcholine which acts on the skeletal muscles. How it acts on skeletal muscles? Through the nicotinic receptors, NM receptors, which is present in the neuromuscular junction. So then it acts on skeletal muscle which causes the muscle contraction. So these are the neurotransmitters what has been released in the autonomic nervous system and the effector organs and the various receptors through which it acts. So this is a reference for further reading. Okay. Thank you, dear students.